Welcome back to the Notsam Studio, and we now welcome in to the Notsam Studio for the very first time, albeit virtually. He is in Los Angeles, California, I believe. He is a comedian extraordinaire. He is a musician. He's a slap boxer. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremiah Watkins is here. How are you, Jeremiah?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Good to be here. I wish I was, in the studio with you, but this is a close second, so I'm stoked.
Well, we'll get there one day. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to get to talk to you. I feel like in the comedy community, these paths just end up crossing over. Like, I was well aware of you for a long time. I think I met you a long time ago. I think Jim and I did Kill Tony.
A long time ago.
A couple years ago, and we just kind of met in passing. But it really wasn't until I brought up you slapboxing Luis J. Gomez on the radio that you reached out, and then I started talking, and we were like, hey, let's record some conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I've been a fan of you guys for a while, just like I dig your guys' work, and it really resonated with me how underneath Lewis's skin you got when you just called me a sensitive man who slapped him many times. That just made me, I probably, if somebody had videoed me, I looked like an insane person in my apartment when I was playing it back, because somebody tagged me in and they cut it up and they sent it to me. And I listened back to it. I was like, that's like the best take possible to get somebody like, how could you let somebody that's so sweet and so nice just really give it to you?
Because I was thinking about it, and I was like, literally every time Lewis is on the show, he's fighting with somebody. Like but that's also why I love Lewis, because it's like,
of course,
within 20 minutes of a conversation, we're all riled up about somebody. Like I had years ago. I had Christina Hutchinson and Corinne Fisher from Guys We Fucked on my show. Like, it was my Friday afternoon shows before I was even doing daily shows, and they were kind of just in the beginning of their podcast. And they kind of threw some shade at Luis J. Gomez. And Luis, being who Luis is, he just called up. Like, he just called up the show live. And I was like, I'm definitely going to put him on.
Of course.
So I put him on, and Corinne stopped talking to me for like 5 or 6 years because she was convinced that I'd set the whole thing up. And like, I'm watching her, and like, she's friends with Lewis and everything's cool. And I'm like, why is she still mad at me for a thing I didn't even do? But she's friends with the guy that did it. And Lewis was like, I know, it's funny, right? It's like, I mean, yeah,
like, technically, but not exactly. She won't talk to me.
Yeah. But so like, I'm thinking about Lewis in that context. And then the last thing that I saw from you was the beautiful song that you had sung to your wife about your feelings and your heart. And like, that struck me as something I'm so not used to seeing, because comedians are so mean and detached that they would never show that side of themselves. And so I'm going like, wait, Lewis, you're like the most physical, like, I'm ready to fight anyone, aggressive guy. And there's a dude singing about his wife on Instagram, and he beat you. Like, I mean, it kind of, like, to me, the story, I guess that putting it in the terms of just he's so sensitive really defines it down to a key. But to me, the story was just, I mean, it was right there for everyone to see. It played itself out.
There.
Yeah.
I mean, you phrase it in a way where I think people were like, yeah, why wasn't I thinking that? You know what I mean? Like, you did the elevator pitch for the Lewis versus Jeremiah movie, and they're like, "Well, take it, kid. That's perfect."
Yeah, because he's sitting there going like, "Yeah, I'm gonna beat Jason Ellis," and I'm like, Jason Ellis is like a real fighter. Like, you didn't even beat the guy who sings about his wife on Instagram. What do you mean you're gonna beat Jason Ellis?
Like, I'm being a logical friend here. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think you're wrong. I think you're very wrong about this. Did you get into fights at all as a kid? I mean, you were raised like a nice religious boy. Did you get into fights?
That's what's so funny about that slap fight is I have a buddy who the night before we went to the stand to do the fight between Lewis and I'd never been in a fight in my life. I trained with my buddy who is a boxer the night before. I happened to be staying at his place in New York. And he has trained for years at gyms and stuff. And he told me we watched Lewis's tape. We watched because we did a one other slap fight where it was just like he came on my podcast when he was visiting LA, and it came up in conversation organically that I'd never been in a fight before. He's like, "Let's fight right now, doggy. Let's go." And I was like, "I'm not gonna fight you on the podcast." I go, "But here's an idea." I go, "Let's do a friendly slap box match at the end of the episode after we've already talked and we've done all the segments and everything." And
here's my problem with the I would fight you, but I feel like it would make it tough to get into segments after that.
Yeah. I don't want to go back to all right, tell me a sex story and I'll play some sax along with it, and
right.
we'll tie a nice bow on this thing. So I know how to close properly. You know what I mean? You got to build up. So we did that, and we reviewed that footage with my buddy. He was super into it. He was so excited that we had like a fight to prep for. So we looked at the footage, and he's like, "Here's everything that Lewis is doing wrong. This, and this." And he goes, "This was pretty recent, right?" I go, "Yeah, it's been within the last month." He goes, "There's no way that he's going to fix all these mistakes within that last time that you guys slapbox to tomorrow night when you guys do it." So he pointed out all the flaws in Lewis's technique. Yeah. And if you watch the video of me slapboxing Lewis, I have a coach in the corner. He's telling me to switch, and he's telling me to do different. He's like a legit dude, and so I took it seriously.
Right.
And I thought it was still going to be like fun, but as I mentioned like before, like as soon as I saw like the fury in Lewis's eyes, I knew that I better strap in and take this seriously. Otherwise, I was going to actually get hurt.
Yeah.
And then the story wrote itself from there. But I'd never been in a fight before, like outside of these dumb slap fights.
Do you feel differently now that you've been in a fight and won a fight? Because I didn't grow up getting into fights either. Like I was pretty good at avoiding fights. Like I would drive people a little crazy. Like I was like a little smart ass, but I was pretty good at like stopping right before or just like getting in a punchline. Plus I was small, so people didn't want to fight me anyway. So I got pretty good at avoiding fights. But now as an adult, I am aware that I don't have that skill. Like I didn't build that skill as a child. So if I were to get in a fight, if I realize, oh, a fight is starting now, I'm gonna lose. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, it's a true fight or flight where you're like, yeah, I'm taking the flight for sure. I'm getting out of here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like as comics, I think that's how we're good about kind of extinguishing situations before people get too angry and riled up and stuff like that. Like I post like a lot of like crowd work videos and stuff. And there's a lot of times where it reaches that moment where it's about to boil over. And I have to calm the person down in a way where it's just like, dude, we're all having fun here. Like we're all joking around. And I got to say, after that slapbox match, to answer your question, it did give me a weird, different kind of confidence within myself because I'm not that guy. But now I have video of doing that, and I'm just like, that was me? Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Plus, you're like, you can't sit there and say, I've lost every fight I've ever been in, because that's not true.
It's very true.
Yeah. That's not factual. The only thing I even came close to fighting when I was younger was when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, I joined the wrestling team. And
what weight class were you in?
So we were on since it was before high school, it was called modified wrestling, which meant that you just kind of matched up with whoever was about the same, like whoever was closest, they would just match people. So like since I was small, I would always have fights with matches with whoever was the smallest kid at the other school. But there was me and one other kid who went 0-13. We did the whole season. We didn't know no wins, no ties, just all losses. And he had an excuse. Like he was like me, he was super short, but unfortunately for him, he was really fat. So he was like this short, fat kid. So the poor kid, because they were just doing it by weight, would get onto the mat and he'd have this like big muscular dude that he would have to wrestle because they were technically the same weight. Because it was this guy who had all this muscle mass, and then the fat kid, of course the little fat kid's going to lose every single time. For me, I mean, it was just a complete lack of skill. Like, I remember getting to, like, the very end of the season. It might have been my last match or, my second to last match or something. And, like, I was just kind of used to losing. And so I went up, and I got on the mat, and, I squared off. And, like, I looked at this guy in the eyes, this kid, And he was like really staring me down. And I swear I will never forget the thought that went through my mind, which was, this is going to be real quick. And I was like, let's go, baby. And he did. He just double-legged me and pinned me right there.
Just right away.
I was like, I saw that one coming a mile away. Like, I didn't have a shot.
Yeah, that's tough. 13, like, I'm a pretty competitive person by nature, so that would be pretty hard for me to swallow, because it's one of those things where if I'm losing to somebody at something, I'm the guy who can be clearly worse than the other person, but I'm like, let's run it back. Let's run it back. Let's do this. Let's go. Like, I can be being owned over and over to a fault, and I'm like, nope, can't accept it. Let's go again. Let's go again.
Right. And it's not like nothing occurs to you to go, you know what? I should just take the loss and then go work and just get better at this skill. It's like, no, I don't want to take the loss.
I just don't want to. I'm the guy who in the movies who is getting pummeled in the face, and they're like, and stay down. And for whatever reason, I'm like, I keep like coming up.
Your arm is like falling off. You're like, is that all you got?
Yeah. My head is literally completely decapitated in my hand. Like, you want some more of this?
Yeah. To the point where nobody even feels bad for you anymore. They're like, what? Why is he doing that? Why?
This guy's a jerk. Why? Yeah. He should know when to quit.
Yeah, I want to hit him now.
Yeah.
So did you end up avoiding fights, or did it just never come up as a kid?
There was literally only one memory I have as a kid where I did this. I punched this kid that was being mean to me, like in the cheek, but I didn't follow through at all. Like, I did this, like, it was embarrassing. I was like, like where like it just went like this, and he like, it was just like exactly probably the speed I'm doing it right now, just like that. And he just looked at me like, and then he goes, you're lucky your brother's Jonathan. And that's all he said. And then he walked away. Because I had an older brother who was more down. He's been in some fights before. My brother's been in some fights. So like, me having an older brother like saved me in that situation.
Right. Because he actually could fight.
He could actually fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did your brother ever try to get you to learn to fight so that he wouldn't have to take on that responsibility?
No, but I'll tell you what, man, he and I fought a lot. We would get in actual fist fights and wrestle. And I used to do this thing to him where he would like beat me up and stuff as a kid, like friendly brother stuff. You know what I mean? Nothing too crazy, but he would get his braces tightened and I would punch him in the mouth right after he got his braces tightened.
Just mean.
It's the meanest thing you can do. But he would beat me up when like my mom wasn't around, and then that's how I would get his payback. He would come home freshly tightened braces, like his mouth is all hurt, and then like he would say something to me. I'm like, oh yeah, and then he'd start bleeding. He's like, dude, and then he would chase me around, and then I'd get pummeled, and it was this whole cat and mouse game that we played.
Yeah. Well, but you can't really blame him. I mean, if you had just gotten your braces tightened and somebody punched you in the mouth, family bonds are not gonna connect you anymore.
No, I mean, we fought a lot over games like Super Street Fighter 2 and stuff like that because like we're both competitive people.
Yeah.
So if one of us was starting to beat each other, or maybe it was like GoldenEye or something like that, if one of us was out, like doing the other one in numbers or whatever, like we were beating them more matches or more games or whatever, more higher kill count, then dude, it was on. Like, it was just like cats and dogs just like rolling around, hitting each other. And then my dad, I remember taking our Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition. He put it on his workbench and he grabbed his sledgehammer and he goes, "This will teach you guys to fight." And he just started beating it. And for like those YouTube videos that you see where the kids are breaking down crying because their parents just destroyed their game, that was me as a kid, but before YouTube.
Wow. And your dad didn't even do it for YouTube clout. He just did it.
He just did it for the sport, man.
Yeah,
it was different in the 90s.
He just enjoyed it. It was just for him.
It was just for his sick pleasure. Dude, he hid our GoldenEye N64 cartridge as a punishment. Like, we got grounded one weekend.
Uh-huh.
and then he forgot where he put it, and we were without it for months. The grounding turned into this serious thing where we had to buy another we had to save up our own money, buy another cartridge, and then he found it months later, like tucked away in like the winter coat section of the closet.
Now, was he apologetic, or was he like, yo, I don't know, I lost it? What do you...
Oh no, he was straight up. He's like, I gotta admit, don't know where I put it.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. He's like, I guess the punishment got a little extended.
Good news, kids. I got another lesson for you. Sometimes things don't work out the way you planned.
Exactly. Patience is a virtue, kids.
So you were raised super religious, right?
Yeah, I was.
Was there any sort of content restrictions on you and your brother and your sister?
Oh, for sure. We didn't like, I didn't even have some of the more, secular channels until later on. Like we didn't have like more proper cable until I was like probably like a 9 or 10. Like I didn't grow up with it until later. Like I had the staple morning cartoons and stuff like that. Like I watched like the Batman animated series and Spider-Man and X-Men and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would watch like TGIF on ABC, but we didn't have Disney or Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network until like years later. And anytime there was nudity or something in a movie, like my parents would allow us to watch the movie, but they would force us to cover our eyes when nudity would come on the screen.
Do you think that was just because they were watching with you? So they didn't want to turn the thing off? So they're like, just cover your eyes.
I think so. I don't know. But it's one of those things where I think my mom didn't want my dad looking at it either.
That's so weird.
I think she was looking over at him like, you better cover those eyes too.
Like, if anybody knows that he's seen that stuff before, it would be your mom.
It would be my mom, yeah. But I think that she was not playing that. She's like, you got one woman and it's me.
And he's like, oh, really? Because I thought Daryl Hannah was definitely who I thought I was going to leave you for.
Exactly, yeah. That's who I'm seeing outside of you on the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not taking the kids to soccer practice and stuff.
Yeah, this is just like finding a picture in my wallet, watching a nude scene in a mainstream movie.
When I'm not selling fences or air conditioning or cars, I'm dating Daryl Hannah on the weekends.
So how do you then sort of become aware of comedy and stand-up and that whole world?
So I did get introduced because to SNL at a really young age, and shows like SNL and Mad TV, because those were on stations that you didn't really need cable for.
Network, yeah.
And that was one of the things that, as a family, we would stay up. They would let us stay up late to watch SNL on Saturday, and if it got too risque, they might change the channel. But that was like one of the only times I remember like disobeying my dad specifically. Is he's like, you can't watch SNL anymore, it's getting too crazy now. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep watching this. It was like that and The Simpsons. I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep watching that. I don't care if that's like
when I was like
rules or whatever.
When I was like 14 and wrestling just got crazy, like to the point where it was like there was almost bare breast on wrestling. Like it was actually, there was at one point. Like it was just insane. My parents actually told me, they were like, I mean, if you hadn't been watching this since you were an infant, you would definitely not be allowed to watch this now. We can't stop you because it's already in, but there's no way if you just turn this on right now, we'd be like, yeah, this is fine for you to watch.
Yeah, this is acceptable. Sure.
Yeah. Like every other word out of wrestlers' mouth is telling their opponent to suck their dicks. Like you can't.
That was a big era of wrestling. I mean, you got to give it to that. That was like a big, it
was huge.
Like the whole freaking,
to this day, it's 2020, and there's still nothing better than telling another human being to suck it.
To suck on a penis.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty big insult.
It's the like, number one. Really? It's the number one insult. It's
number one.
It's the best one.
How dare you?
There's no coming back. How could you possibly respond?
Like, I don't know.
I guess I'm gonna have to do it now.
No, I get chicks, dude. Shut up.
I'm not into that.
Yeah. Why would you insinuate that? By the way, your body looks really nice tonight. The glow off of the baby oil looks pretty good. I gotta admit.
I'm just saying, are you like mixing up your routine or something? Because you look super in shape. Like you.
I mean, your skin. I don't know why it's popping right now. I don't know if there's a new skin regimen that you're using, but I mean, you look swole, bro, for sure.
Yeah, but I don't want to suck it though. I don't want to
suck it.
I'm not.
I would never do that.
I would never do it.
Never.
Yeah. So, but when you're watching SNL, did you have this idea in your head that that's something that a person can do, or was it this sort of far away thing where it's like, I didn't even consider that as an option?
Dude, it was literally a foreign idea entirely, especially being a kid from Kansas.
Right.
You just think what you can do is the jobs that you see naturally around you. TV to me as a kid was literally like the La La Land, the fantasy world that real people do this. Like if they, like the only celebrities that I saw growing up as a kid were the local morning radio, that you might catch them in the wild, which that was super rare. Like if they're doing a meet and greet or like an event or something like that. Or like I still remember seeing the weatherman that I grew up watching at the zoo randomly with his family, and I freaked out just seeing him outside of the screen, just because I'm like, these people exist outside of this world. This is nuts.
Yeah. How could this be? Yeah. I love local radio fame is maybe the best fame. Like I was interning in Syracuse with a guy named Scorch who had been in Syracuse for years. And he had this voice. It was super. Everybody knew who Scorch was. You just knew the voice. And so even if you didn't know his face, you would know him. And so like, I remember we'd go to like Bennigan's or something like that, whatever was in Syracuse. And we'd be getting food. And it was the same line every time. Anytime anybody came up to him and said, "Are you on the radio?" He'd go like this, "No, I'm right here." And that was his line. And I got such a kick out of it every time.
Like such a classic road comic bit. Like best. Just so like the quick misdirect was like, nah. Yeah. I don't know if you know this about me, but that's how I got my start in the quote unquote biz, was morning radio. I got a job, an on-air position at like 19 in the local market and the intercom market, called this station called 96.5 The Buzz. That was like the stinger that would play at the end of all the songs and everything. And I was like a man on the street, and I was just a call screener for the show. And then they would have me on as like, I was like their resident virgin who they would talk to. They're like, "You haven't had sex with a woman. Let's talk more about it." You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Radio doesn't change. I swear to God, it doesn't change. To this day, if Jim and I got an intern and they were like, I mean, it's happened. And they're like, "Oh, actually, I'm a virgin." Like, it's like, nope, we just got to talk about you. And you'll be like, "Yep. You're Tim the Virgin now." Like,
exactly.
Hey,
exactly.
It's Jeremiah the Virgin in studio. Get any chicks this weekend, Jeremiah? No, I didn't think so.
All right, let's check in with you next week, you silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my radio name when I was working morning radio was Stedman. Which is Oprah Winfrey's husband, because I got the job by auditioning. They were doing this mass call, like, "We need a new man on the street for 96.5 The Buzz." I saw the notice like on their website, like a couple weeks late, and I sent in a video anyway. I go, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I just stumbled upon this. I know I'm really late, but here's my entry to be your man on the street." And it was a music video. It was called "A Love Ballad for Oprah." And it was just me literally professing my love for Oprah in an R&B style music video that I shot and edited myself. Literally, I put a camera on a tripod and I would walk around, and then I would do the thing, and then I have to walk back around and hit the button, and how you do all those self-made stuff like in high school and college and stuff like that. And that landed me the job. He's like, "This is like one of the only funny videos that we have gotten, like, out of hundreds of submissions."
That's so funny. Now I'm assuming like it paid nothing.
Well, when I started, it was just going to be an intern position, but their call screener happened to quit that same week, and he called me and he goes, "Normally you just intern, but this other girl, she just left. Do you want the call screener position and you'll do some on-air stuff? I was like, what? Like everything just aligned.
Yeah.
So I was making money, like I was getting paid to work there, and I would go down to like the prize room, and there was people like in their mid 20s and 30s who hated me because I was this 19-year-old kid who just stumbled upon this awesome job where I'm on the radio. I have a radio name and I'm like part of the crew, and like they couldn't accept that they had been interning like for a long time, and I just like waltzed in with a job at a young age.
Yeah, I mean, people like will hear that story, and if they don't know radio, they'll just go like, yeah, it was a local market radio thing, so at 19 of course you're on the air or whatever. But like that's not, when you said that you were on the morning show at 19,
dude,
like local market more than any, because everybody who's in that market, like that's the only, like you said, that's the only sort of shot at fame. That's the only show business there is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're not going to, there's one weatherman, so you're not going to be the weatherman. You might try to get a job at the news station, but to get a job at a news station, theoretically, you have to have some kind of degree or journalism or something. Like that's right. Radio is the only sort of market to market thing that's remotely show business that you can just go in as a creative and try to muscle your way into a job.
Yeah, everybody has to work their way. I mean, you know better than anybody. You have to take your licks and you have to work your way up in radio. And for me I still look back on that time and I'm like, how did that perfectly align? And it was one of those things where, so the morning DJ who I was working for, he got fired, and then a new lady came in. And she said to me on her first day, she goes, because you worked for him, you will never work for me. Wow. And it was really, really harsh. And I like was so bummed. And I you get a taste and then it's all taken away.
Yeah.
And, but it was a great incentive for me to get out of Kansas City, because I was like, oh, I'm out of my options here. I've been told, and she stayed there for another 10 years. She literally just left the show like a year or two ago.
Wow.
To another station. So that's just to give you an example, like, oh, that my hunch was right. Like it was good to get out of town and just go somewhere else.
It also, that type of thing gives you, like, it makes you realize that show business is at all attainable, right? Because even, when you're a kid, like, and you're listening to the radio, you don't fathom even that is a career choice. You don't understand how people can get to the radio. It's just a thing that you listen to. It's like there's entertainment and then there's getting a job. So that is the thing. When you get a local radio job, now all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I could do something in comedy. Maybe I could move to one of these bigger cities. And even if it's get to a bigger radio station, if I could do it in this city, maybe I can go to a bigger radio market.
I applied to radio stations when I first moved to LA, like 11 years ago. That was one of the first things, because I had that on my resume. I'm like, I literally have months. Like I worked at that place for like almost a year and a half, but the last 6 months that I worked there, they would only let me drive the prize van and do video editing and just all behind the scenes stuff for.
Was that because the lady?
For her show, because she wouldn't allow me on air. She would only let me do behind the scenes stuff.
Because that's another like local radio thing where it's like, if it's your last day, you just get erased from history.
Yep.
And we're just going to do, we're going to do, this is the new show. And it's like the thing that was on yesterday. That never existed. It never existed.
What show are you talking about? I don't know. This is the show. This has always been the show.
Oh, we've always been here. Yeah. It really is weird that happens. But I mean, it's the listeners too, because you just get so used to listening to your station in the morning. It was before, there were so many options in podcasts, and you could so easily, and Sirius, and you could just easily listen to whatever you want in your car. But it's like that would be the station that you listen to. So the first morning, you might be like, what is this? But by Friday of that first week, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot there was another show that I used to listen to.
Yeah.
It's so disposable.
I will say that the thing that's real interesting about like comedians having podcasts is you kind of realize, like, especially when you're going to certain markets and you have to do these morning shows and stuff, to promote shows, you realize how not funny a lot of morning radio guys are, where you're like, oh, this is just like, it's like when you like leave your high school circle of friends and then you visit them back in, you're like, oh yeah, my high school circle of friends, they weren't really that funny.
Right.
They were just like all I knew at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, yeah, radio guys are more, they're super protective of their spot, and they want to act like there's so much mystery going on behind the curtain that you could never do what they do. But it's not a difficult job, though.
I mean, I came in early one time when I was working morning radio, and the DJ made me promise like to not tell anybody what was going on, but they were like, you know, they were pre-recording segments and stuff like that, that for me as a citizen, it blew my mind that they were pre-recording some of the segments with people and then just hitting play and acting like it was all live. Like that's just a normal part of radio that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah.
But for me, finding that out, I was like, oh, this is so insane.
Dude, when we were doing Jocktober on Opie and Anthony, and you realize like you listen, now that you can listen to different local markets because of the internet, you could just tap into, just put in random stations and you listen and you realize that they're all doing the same bits because they all get them from the same service. It's just you don't know because you don't hear the other market. So there's no way you would hear both shows. But then you can listen to both shows and you're like, oh my God, they're just following a template.
Yeah. The major one that I've noticed that they do in almost every radio market is they do some kind of rose bit where
War of the Roses. Yes.
Like the War of the Roses kind of thing, where they have somebody call into the show and they're like, who would you like to send these roses to? And then like, you're busted. you should have been sending it to me, your wife of 40 years. It's like the voices don't even match like the relationship. It's like they've been given like a script.
Well, have you never did?
I'm a sprung 85-year-old woman. Like, how could you do this to me?
You never did that, right? You never did work as the actors in the fake War of the Roses bits?
I never did it. It's so funny. I never did it when I was working morning radio, but when I was desperate for gig money in LA, like I did it like probably 9 or 10 years ago. I would be one of those guys. I would be one of the guys where they're like, you got to hit these beats. You got to say this, this, and this when they're prompting you, and we'll pay you $50 at the end of this call. And I'm like, great. I can do improv. Not a problem.
Yeah. Because Joe DeRosa did it too. Joe DeRosa told us one day, he was like, yeah, these are fake. I used to do them all. Like, this is what we did. Like when you're first starting in comedy and you're trying to figure out how to make any money. Like, I'm like, hell yeah. Now you also, I saw on YouTube, my favorite thing is to find people that I know that were in courtroom shows, because I swear, even when I started to get smart to it, I was like, well, they're probably taking real cases and just kind of hyping them up, you know, and just making them like, and I go, you mean it's just a full on fake, made up, totally scripted nonsense, nothing lie? And then I watched you. First of all, like, this is after we had done your show. So I already knew that you had told me that you don't drink and you never drank, really, right?
Right.
So you're on this courtroom show and they're like, he's drunk right now. And you're like, no, bro, I'm not drunk. And it's like the worst, like, California rocker dude drunk guy. And
dude.
I'm like, oh my God, it's all a lie.
Dude, I have been asked by so many people. It blew their mind. When I posted the link to that, people could not believe it. They're like, wait, are all of them fake? Because a lot of people still watch those shows because they're interesting to some degree. It's like, it's great reality TV. You want to see what happens next. With that situation, the whole audition process, I got to tell you, I wish that I would have had the tapes of the audition process for this room. It was the most unprofessional thing you've ever seen. Nothing to do with a union or anything like that. So nothing is like very legit. But dude, it's these people who are the most desperate actors, including myself, who showed up to a Craigslist audition.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's so funny. They have to do it on Craigslist because they can't advertise the show, because then people will know the show is fake and then they won't watch the show when it comes on.
Dude, it's this whole rabbit hole of of a mess of different weird expectations. Everybody's lined up, and you've heard the expression the cattle call. This is truly what that was, like times 10. They didn't call anybody into a room. We're all sitting in this big room where we all have numbers, and they would call the number, and then they would present a line in the case, and they would ask you how you would respond to that line. And you were doing improv in front of 50, 60 people crammed into a room who you're competing against to get the job. You're looking at other people, and everybody's judging each other and sizing each other up while you're improvising.
So you're having an improv battle to see who wins the appearance on the court show.
And it paid $50 cash under the table.
Do you know why that's so filthy? Because they didn't want to hire writers.
Of course not.
They were just like, we'll just hire, we'll make them compete because they all want to be on TV so bad.
Yeah.
That we'll pay them $50 and we'll make it seem like the real prize is just getting to improv on our show.
Dude, so when I did it, they basically handed me a script that had the bullet points. It was the only script that I've seen that has bullet points. They're like, you have to hit these bullet points for this case to even make remote sense. But they said, say whatever you want in between. I go, whatever I want? And they're like, whatever you want. So it was the coolest improv game that I got to do for TV for $50. Dude, I literally was killing the judge so hard that they had to keep cutting around him breaking and laughing for how dumb the character I played was. He literally was like if you listen closely, you'll hear the tail end of laughs on certain cuts that it goes to because he is breaking and the courtroom is breaking and he's having to settle them down with his gavel and be like, calm down, guys. This is a serious case.
It's on your YouTube channel. It's easy to search out. I found it, obviously, but I don't. You should have a T-shirt out with just a picture of your face with the long hair on it that just says "vocals, bro." It's my favorite line in any show when he's just like, "And what do you do with the band?" And you're like, "Vocals, bro." I was like, yeah, of course he.
And he goes, no, you're going to call me Your Honor or Boss Ross. I'm like, okay, Boss Ross.
yeah, which is what the character would say. He would. That would be the option that
That's what he would choose.
Now, do you think that they're all fake? Like, do you think because People's Court with Judge Marilyn Milian, that one is my favorite by far. I definitely think Judge Judy's fake. But People's Court, that's the one that I hold out hope for because that's the one that they say, like, generally speaking, the people on the People's Court are not that exciting, which is usually good. Like, that's usually a sign that you're actually watching a real show.
It's more realistic. Yeah.
It's a little more realistic.
Very heightened. It's pretty grounded for the most part.
Yeah. So I still and the way they supposedly do it is like they go through small claims courts. Like they have producers that just pick through small claims courts across the country. And they just pull out cases and they call up the people and they go, hey, we'll pay all your legal fees if you want to do this case and we'll fly you to New York. And they have them come out and do it there. I'm hopeful that People's Court is real.
I hope so too. I hope that there is one prevailing real court show out there, but it's hard to say because you would, for entertainment purposes, they could be inflating certain things in these cases for people who agree, but I would love for it to be real.
It's like when you realize that Jerry Springer was, completely fake.
Dude, Jerry Springer to me is like the closest thing to wrestling for talk shows that there is because it's so like the audience is getting, everybody knows why they're there.
Yes.
They want to see the fights break out.
Yes. Yeah, that's just baffling to me. That's what drives me crazy. Is like most reality shows, the court show that you were on, Jerry Springer, all these shows are as fake, if not faker, than professional wrestling. And they actually claim to not be. Whereas professional wrestling is like this, this is what it is. We all know what this is. And still they go like, you watch wrestling? Don't you know that stuff's fake? Anyway, I was watching this court show the other day. And I'm like, okay, great.
You're like, you think what I watch is fake? What do you watch is fake?
Yeah.
People's elbow. Let's go.
Yeah.
If a judge did a people's elbow at the end of a case, like come on. Come on. Dude, maybe we meld the two. Maybe we sell a show.
I am surprised that Vince never did like Wrestler's Court. and
that would be amazing.
With honestly, if they got on their network and they were like, who wants to go into the court of Judge Stone Cold? And like he did a courtroom show with all the wrestlers and he would crack his beers together.
Yeah.
I would watch it.
Dude, I think a lot of people would watch that. Especially, dude, because a lot of those guys, like especially retired wrestlers, like they still make their rounds and they go to the different panels and stuff like that. But
yeah,
dude, to see people do that after they're kind of already in their prime, they've already had their heyday, you still want updates from these people. Anytime I see like a recent interview, it'll pop up in my YouTube algorithm because I've clicked on it enough, like what Hulk Hogan is up to now or something.
Yeah.
Or like Hulk Hogan commenting on a recent, like my YouTube just shows to me, oh, I'm like, okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah. I mean, you should, if you want to follow Marty Jannetty's Facebook page, he is confessed to murder. He has insinuated that he might be attracted to a woman that he thought was his daughter for a long period of time. It's just a plethora of content.
Dude, I did a movie. You definitely don't know this about me. It was a little indie comedy movie where I did it with Jake the Snake, Roddy Piper, and Diamond Dallas Page.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's called The Bet. It's actually on Prime now. It came out on Prime years later after we did it. But, dude, I have fond memories of playing catch with Jake the Snake on set, like us just throwing a softball back and forth and him commenting on how my shorts were too short. And he's like, I just wouldn't want to see like, my son in those shorter shorts. It's a bit much, man. Coming off a little gay in those shorts.
And you're like, cool, Mr. Jake the Snake.
Yeah, fantastic. But yeah, that was when we unfortunately Roddy, he passed away literally like months after we had finished filming that. It's one of his last on-screen appearances, was this little indie comedy that he was nice enough to agree, like, yeah, it's fun, it's a fun idea. And then I have multiple scenes with Diamond Dallas Page, and he was super nice. Like all those guys were really, really nice.
Yeah, it's amazing how nice wrestlers are in real life.
Well, Roddy, he was a paid regular at the Comedy Store, and he would come up there with Steve Simone, and Steve would kind of help him with his timing and stuff. He didn't need much help, but like just comedic beats are slightly different than,
sure, of course, kind of promo arena. Yeah.
But he would bring Roddy up with him on stage, and they would just tell the most amazing stories. Like, and Steve is a huge wrestling fan, so he knew how to prompt him. He'd be like, yeah, well, what about this, buddy? Like that one thing you told me. And then he was just kind of whispering in his ear, and he's like, oh yeah. And then he would just like roll out these amazing stories. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah. It is weird when you have all those stories and you don't realize that they'll appeal to all audiences. Like it's just a great story.
Oh, it can have literally one funny thing in it, and they don't care. They're hanging on the edge of every word that you're saying because it's just a fascinating, just everything. So
you're very, I don't want to say you're a nice comic because, for some reason, I think maybe it's because you do so much crowd work, and maybe it's just because you record everything, but like there's plenty of interactions you've had with hecklers, and like you've gone back and forth with a lot of people, and obviously you've been a part of Roast Battle forever. But was that meanness kind of always in you? Do you because you're not mean on the same level that most comics are mean, and it's always interesting to me to see somebody who's not necessarily all the way in but just likes being around it. Like most of the time when you meet quote unquote positive people, they're like, no, I don't want negative energy around me. I like people that can maintain their individual energy, you know what I mean, without changing where they are. I feel like if it's really who you are, you should be able to maintain without making everybody around you go away or try to equal up to you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I am a very positive person, like in general, but there's something inside me that I think that it's a really fun release when I am going back with a heckler, or like will sometimes roast people or whatever, or I'm around shows like Roast Battle or Kill Tony. They're naturally roasty in its nature. I think I like being around it, and I think it's surprising for people because what I like to do is I will roast people, but I will never get to a point. I don't like getting to the point where someone's feelings are actually getting hurt, which I've been a part of those shows, and I don't like being a part of that, where to the point where somebody's like, they leave the stage not feeling like they were a part of the joke at the end of the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I don't like it when somebody's like, oh, I feel like I got crushed and I just I wish I could just be a shadow of myself right now. Like, I don't really want to be in the room. Like, they just sink down. Like, I never like roasting to that extent. It's always like, it's more verbal jousting to me, where I'm like, we're hopefully all having a good time and everybody's leaving in a good mood and can be at the end of the night like, you got me, I got you. That was fun, right?
Are you
That's
good?
That's how I look at it.
Are you good at being around like non-comics that aren't as good at taking jokes? Like people who are not in comedy, you find a lot more people who are more sensitive to stuff, or people who just don't recognize that this is actually a form of camaraderie.
I think it's a big difference between the East Coast and the West Coast for sure. Like if I didn't understand that at first when I first made my first couple trips to New York and I was getting like roasted or grilled a little bit, dude, like I thought everybody hated me. I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And then like after I went back, like I'm like, oh, this is like kind of like what you got. Like,
right.
We're in the same green room for a reason. Now what you got?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Robert Kelly, dude, he freaking roasted me so hard at Skankfest that I'm like, yeah, I gotta give it up. You know what I mean? We're in the same green room, and we like it was one of those things where as a comic, you got to know your place sometimes. And this was one of those things where I was in the same green room because it was a cool festival show. And they were roasting one of their buddies who I'm not close with.
Yes.
And I thought that I could jump in.
Oh, no.
And I jumped in.
Do you remember which buddy it was?
Zinger out.
Do you remember who it was?
Oh, man. I forget who Robert was roasting.
Okay.
But, dude, literally, as soon as the West Coast Outsider threw a line in, and it was good. It was a good one too, which they all went on me and they all they like annihilated me where I'm like, I concede. I'm just happy to be here, guys.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like because I've been in the room, like the people that I've been in the room with since I was like for almost 15 years now, it like boggles my mind. And something that I had to learn very early is like, even if you have one that you think is good, before you open your mouth, you need to have 50 lines. You need to have 50 jokes. You need to be able to go for the next hour. If you don't have that in the chamber ready to go, don't come up with that. Even if I don't care how good the one is, because
that's where I was.
Yes.
I just had the one where I was just like, I was about to hop on stage, go to another spot, and I threw that out there. I'm like, and then when they turned, I was like, and then I just got lit up and I was like, yep, you guys are right. Yep, I spoke out. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and all you can really do is laugh, right? You just have to laugh along and hope that it ends soon.
Dude, yeah. I mean, it was hilarious.
Of course.
I had to take my licks, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So when did you kind of figure out the difference in like improv and sketch and stand up?
So when I was fresh to LA, I got heavily immersed in Second City, Los Angeles out here, and I was doing every improv show that I could do. I was on multiple improv teams, would go up as much as I could in that regard. And I made the switch about almost like after I finished like their conservatory program at Second City and was doing like other classes. And after I finished interning there, I went full tilt into stand-up because there was a while where I was doing improv and stand-up at the same time, but I was splitting my time and getting kind of mediocre at both after a while because, they're taking away from each other.
Yeah.
And then when I went full tilt into stand-up, that's when more doors actually started opening for me out in LA. And for me, I always consider improv such a huge asset to what I do specifically, because I do a lot of crowd work and I do a lot of riffing. So I kind of feel like I get the best of both worlds by doing stand-up and not having to commit to another group of people for rehearsals and scheduling and all that stuff. It's just me on my shoulders to work as hard as I can. You know?
When did the LA comics start to kind of embrace you? Like, you know, that whole scene start to be like, yeah, you're cool. You're one of us.
There's different levels at the Comedy Store that you have to work your way up from. And I started feeling like I was part of like what like a true like more of an LA comic is when I got passed over to what is called the friends and family section of the Comedy Store. It goes open mic, like the potluck level, and then if you get to the next level, that's friends and families and employees, you go up in that next section of the night and you can call in and you get one 5-minute spot during the week at a later date. And then the next level is the paid regular, where you do the longer sets. You can park in a lot, your name on the wall. You're truly a part of the family at that point. And I had to just work my balls off, and I still did it in what people consider a shorter amount of time than a lot of comics have to. So I'm grateful, but I just would not take no for an answer, and I kept nose against the grindstone from 2011 to 2016. So it took me about 5.5 years of going like every week, a lot of times every day, just hanging out, putting in the time, watching comics to get to that paid regular status. But it took me like 6 months outside of when I first started showing up there consistently to get over to the friends and family section. So I got to that section quick, but then I had to stay in limbo for like another 5 years on top of that.
Is that maddening in the sense that like when you get to step one quickly, you almost feel like, okay, this is the pace that I'm moving at now. And then when it starts to slow down dramatically.
It's an ego check. It's an ego check and a humility check for sure, because you start thinking like, oh, I'm as good as, which is never a good frame of thought to be in, that I've learned over the years. Like, stop comparing yourself to other people. But you start assuming that you're at a certain level with your career, and you just can't do that. Like, the longer I stay out here, like, I'm happiest when I'm not comparing myself to anybody else's career, and I'm just doing what I do and letting the cards fall as they may. That's the only way I can kind of look at it without going crazy. Otherwise, you're just unhappy all the time. If you're comparing yourself like what? How come that guy got this? It's like, that's just not a good mindset to be in.
No, and you're creating these weird goals that are based on other people's achievements that aren't real and don't apply to you at all. So it's like, you know.
Dude, I had so many goals. When I first moved to LA, I had so many goals in my head that I was like, I have to do this by age 25. And they were so unrealistic, where by the time I got to 25, it's super depressing, because you're like, I haven't reached any of my goals. But they're unrealistic goals in the first place that you shouldn't have set for yourself.
Yeah, do you ever think, because I was the same way, like when I was a kid, I was like, you know, I was like, I want to be the youngest to do this. Like, you want to be one of those wonderkins, right? You want to be like one of these, like, oh, I can't believe not only is he this good, but he's so young. And you that's who you're convinced that you are. But like, I think about it now, and if I had gotten any of the stuff that I wanted when I was 25, I would have blown it. Like, by now, I would have had nothing. I would have been working in an office somewhere. I would have had to figure out something else, because I would have blown it. And, you know, once you get up there, you can't really go back down and then try to get back, right?
Yeah. Also, my experience with people who you become a flash in the pan if you don't end up progressing naturally. I've seen it happen. And some people it works for, and that's great, where they hit their moment real young and they can stay with that. But a lot of times it's a big spike and then it's a big fall right after. And I'd much rather be, you know, just slowly going up on that roller coaster, you know, rather than like just free falling, like after I reach a certain peak and then coming back down.
Yeah. The only thing that I ever really think about in that regard is am I in a better spot right now today? Even if it's the tiniest bit better, am I in a better spot today than I was a year ago?
Yeah.
And if in a year you've improved the slightest amount and you can keep that consistently, you know, that's as much as you could possibly ask for.
For sure.
You know,
I mean, that's truly, if you're, even if it's a slow acceleration, you're living the dream in some capacity.
Yeah.
You can look back and be like, oh, I'm a little bit higher than I was. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and I mean, think about you. That you should be comparing yourself not to other people in the business. You should be comparing yourself to you at 19 in Kansas, working at the radio station, and being like, I can't believe that I'm, you know, the wacky man on the street guy. Like, imagine if I'm the wacky man on the street guy knew that in 10 years or however many years it was, you'd be doing what you're doing now. He'd think you were the man.
Oh, dude, I'm super grateful. I try to reflect on stuff like that, like really think back to my roots and where I came from, because I don't have any family who is even remotely close to the entertainment field. So I'm truly a stranger to this whole business. So I look back on memories that I've had from over the years and some of the comedians that I've gotten to work with over time who I really look up to and I respect. And it's amazing. I mean, yeah, it's so cool.
I mean, here's the wild thing, right? You're talking to me and you go, well, one of the things that influenced me was Mad TV. That kind of started to get my brain in that direction, Mad TV and SNL. And then go forward and you're doing a podcast where you've got Mad TV's Bobby Lee dressed up as Yoko Ono performing in a weird, absurdist universe that you've created. I mean, come on. This is it.
Dude,
this is it.
Bobby is one of those comics that's very special to me because if he like has your back and he's looking out for you, he's just very good at taking care of younger comics. And he was the first comic to take me on the road. And I'll never forget that. I grew up watching him and loving everything that he did. And he took me on the road first. And I remember that was the first thing where I could call home about and my family understood the context. Because a lot of times in the Midwest or when you live in a different area outside of LA, you don't have the expectations are weird and different. So they don't really understand milestones, like things that you and I might get excited about.
Totally.
But I said, I'm opening for Bobby Lee on the road. And my mom was like, you're on your way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because she knows who he is. I mean, she knows Bobby Lee from Mad TV, Bobby Lee. She doesn't know the maniac that Bobby Lee actually is. That's my favorite thing about Bobby Lee, that he's done radio with me and with us like in so many different incarnations that I never know if he's doing a bit or if he's serious. Like, I never know if he's having a panic attack or if he just knows it's funny to be having a panic attack right now, or if it's both, or if he is kind of feeling that, but then also is like, maybe I'll just make a big production of this because that's what I'm feeling right now. But I also don't care to ask. I just sit there and enjoy and go like, yeah, I'll be in this world with you.
Now imagine being on the road with that and second guessing every single thing that he says as a young comic and literally having almost panic attacks, not knowing when he's joking and when he's actually joking.
Yeah. And you're on the road with him, so you're kind of trying to impress him, and you're at least trying to be, you know, his guy for him. Whatever you need, Bobby. And he's like, well, this is what I need. And you're like, okay. And he's like, I'm joking. Oh no, I know.
He does so many, I call them tests. He does so many tests to see how honest you're being with him. And one of the, like, he's always thinking that you have like an agenda or something.
Which would be what?
We would be chilling somewhere at a restaurant. We'd be eating food. And he goes, you got to be honest with me, man. He goes, do you think this is cool right now? I go, what do you mean? Like, we hadn't spoken in a couple minutes. We're like eating our burgers or whatever. He's like, do you think this is cool right now? You and me out in public, people walking by. Do you think this is cool? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, do you think it's cool that you're hanging out with me right now? And I go, I guess. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess it is kind of cool. He goes, thank you for being honest, man. He just goes back to eating. He has all these weird little tests that they just come out of nowhere where I'm like, where is this going? Okay, Bobby, sure, great.
And you're like, is he doing it? Is he testing me right now? Or is he kidding? Or is it both? Or I don't know.
The test was he wanted me to be honest where I guess our friendship level was at, where I think he wanted us to get past the point eventually. You know what I mean?
Where you were just friends.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with Bobby Lee rather than I'm hanging out with Bobby. You know what I mean? There's a difference between I'm going to hang out with Bobby versus I'm hanging out with Bobby Lee. And I think that he wanted to kind of like
get past
that in the relationship.
Like you're not at the point anymore where you're calling your mom and using him as a benchmark for your show business career.
Or saying his full name.
Bobby Lee.
Yeah. Bobby Lee.
I'm with Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee from Mad TV. Bobby Lee.
Bobby Lee, Mad TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe last time Jim and I had him on the show in LA, he got super upset because Jim had farted in the studio. And it smelled, and he got offended by that. He thought it was really rude, and he stood up.
Dude,
he's like, "That's rude. That's rude. What you're doing. What you just did."
He literally farted into the mic on my podcast. He literally, but he did. He was polite. He goes, "Can I fart?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I do it to the mic?" I go, "Yeah, of course." Pointed down, and he did it with a deep modulated Barry White voice, and it was pretty epic.
He's literally one of my favorite people.
He's the best, dude.
Well, look, Jeremiah Watkins, of course, people can get to know you and the people that know you a little bit more on your podcast, Jeremiah Wonders. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this week it's featuring the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts.
It is. I'm very much looking forward to the episode. I had a blast with you on my podcast. It was one of those things where these Zoom podcasts are sometimes hard to do remotely because there's a little bit of like, but dude, it was seamless and it was like you're in the room. So yeah, I appreciate you doing it, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a good time doing it, obviously, because I was like after it, I was like, oh, that was really fun. I could have done that for a while. And then I was thinking about it and I was like, we could just do it again for my channel. Yeah, we could just also do that. And I'll do it here. We could just have more conversation. And so,
yeah.
So I enjoyed
I hit you. I was like, what time works for you? You're like, that's a good thing about having a home studio. Whenever. I'm like,
whenever, bro.
Okay, that's pretty dope.
Yeah. You want to do it tomorrow? You want to do it in 3 weeks? What do you think? And you're like, I don't know. I guess 5 o'clock. I'm like, yep. Okay.
I like options. This is cool.
Yeah. Well, Jeremiah Wonders is a podcast. Of course, you got tons of content up on YouTube. Search it out. And anything else? And of course, your Instagram. That's where people can find you being sensitive.
Yes, sometimes sensitive. At Jeremiah Stand Up on my Instagram. I'll be putting out some more music soon. Also, comedy music video. I do like all ranges of comedy, but I also will have some. I can't announce it quite yet, but I have some exciting stand-up news that will drop probably within a month from this dropping. So look out for something around that.
Does it rhyme with Peschel?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, I don't know what other stand-up news there could be, but
we'll see. I'm being canceled, Sam.
Well, real quick, when you put out that music video that was not comedic at all, and you got good response on it, was there a part of you? I feel like there's a little part in all of us that whenever we do something that's different from what we're doing, we just go, "Oh, people like this. I should just do this from now on." Like, was there any part of you that's like, "Oh, I should just be a recording artist"?
No, I mean, if anything, it pushes me when I saw a little bit of like, I got the people who liked it really liked it, and the people who didn't like it, I was like, oh, this is obviously never going to be for you. So don't worry about like that. But it just kind of pushes me more in the direction of like to be inspired by people like Jamie Foxx and like Justin Timberlake and guys who have full acting careers and they do comedy and stuff like that, and they happen to do great music as well. I'm like, maybe, that's like a goal down the line. I would love to have a career like that, but that's the only no. But it wasn't like, I'm changing things. It's like, no, I'll go back to the silly characters and different stuff right after this. Like, here's a quick commercial break.
Because
we'll be right back.
That would be the problem. Like you would switch careers, you'd become a recording artist, and then you'd be like, you know what? It's time to be silly again. And all your music fans would be like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, why are you even trying? It's like, oh, well, I used to be a comedian. Boo.
Yeah. Or like you become a great big recording artist and all the girls would like you and everything, and then somebody would find all the stuff you did as the wave that everybody had forgotten about, and you'd get canceled. So it'd be like, I should have just done the stuff I was doing before.
This guy was singing love songs, and I mean, he just took a fake load to the mouth from a guy, and that's not his wife.
Did he and his friends just pretend to be 9/11? I think he and his friends
did they just personify 9/11?
Well, it's been fun, man. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you again soon, man.
All right, thanks for having me, brother. I'll talk to you soon.